Over the next several videos, we're going to be taking a look at completing 1040EZ form for filing taxes based on several different scenarios. Today we're looking at Edgar Flores. So here's the deal with the 1040. The 1040 is the form that Americans use to complete their federal income tax returns. It can be long and complicated, and a lot of it doesn't apply to most people. So to simplify it, the government created a simpler version, the 1040EZ. At the time of this document, which I think we're using, it was updated 2018. There may be different tax documents. So this is just to give you the general idea of what filling this out looks like. However, it may not be 100% accurate to tax forms as they are changed and revised. So the 1040EZ, which I think is now, like I said, it's been changed. I think it's just the 1040, but again, this is similar. It's good for people who are filing single or filing jointly, married filing jointly. There are different ways that taxes can be filed. You claim no dependents, so that means there are no children that are being claimed as a dependent, and there are no, I don't know, maybe you take care of an elderly parent or grandparent. There are some different qualifications for dependents. This is good for people who are under 65 and they make less than $100,000 a year. If there was no investments or dividends or interest from investments, and if you are not claiming adjustments to income or credits. So this is just if you don't really have a lot of extra things going on, you work, and that's about it. That's how you earn your money. So there are going to be 4 different scenarios we'll look through. We're only looking at scenario number 1 today. This is Edgar Flores. He's 16, lives with his parents. He works around 10 hours a week cleaning pools for $15 an hour. Edgar's W-2 will be listed below. There's some information here about filling in these the document that will help us fill it in. I've already filled it in. We're just going to talk through it. Okay, so this is Edgar's W-2. It has his name, first name, last name, address. It has an employee ID number, state wages and tips, state income tax. It also has, and we're going to be looking at filing federal. There are 2 different taxes that are filed. There's federal and there's state income tax. So we're going to look at filing the federal using this information here. So let's take a look down below. This is the 1040EZ. In it, we have a spot to write name, last name, social security number. If Edgar were a 16-year-old that were married, his spouse's name and social security would go here. Home address be listed here. If there was an apartment number, city, state, zip code. If there was a foreign address, he would also fill it out here. Presidential election campaign. This would be $3 going to that fund toward the election campaign. Okay, let's get into the meat of this. We pretty much just work through line by line. So line 1, wages, salaries, and tips. This should be shown in box 1 of your form's W-2. So for some people, like if they work multiple jobs, they'll get multiple W-2s you would have to add those numbers up from box 1 to get your number here. So for Edgar, and I'm going to be doing some scrolling, our box 1, $5,505. So that goes in box 1 here. Taxable interest. If the total is over $1,500, you cannot use this form. For the purpose of this example, we're going to assume that there is no taxable interest and that there's no unemployment compensation or Alaska Permanent Fund. So we're using zeros for both of those. For line 4, you add lines 1, 2, and 3, and that's the adjusted gross income. So we would add this, this, and this, and we get our adjusted gross income. Line 5, if someone can claim you or your spouse in a joint return as a dependent, check the applicable box below, enter the amount from the worksheet on the back. So for this, yes, claimed as a dependent. Edgar's 16, lives at home with his parents. Most likely he's not filing, he's filing as a dependent. Most likely he's filing as a dependent, which means that he's being claimed on his parents. His parents would be claiming him on their taxes. So you pretty much just follow the instructions, enter the amount from the worksheet on back. So let's take a look at the worksheet on the back. And that was here. Worksheet for line 5 dependents who checked one or both boxes. So there's one box checked. Use this worksheet to figure out the amount entered on line 5 if someone can claim you as a dependent, even if a person chooses not to do so. To find out if someone can claim you as a dependent, see publication 501. So amount, if any, from line 1 on front. Well, remember our line 1 on the front was $5,505. It's being added with $350. This was just standard given there. It gives us a total of $5,855. From there, we are looking at the minimum standard deduction of $1,050. So for line C, enter the larger of line A or B. So we're going to look here, we're going to say what's larger, line A or line B? Well, line A was larger, so we're using 5,855 here. Maximum standard deduction, if single, enter 6,350. So he's filing single, so there's 6,350. Enter the smaller of line C or D here. So I'm going to look at C and D. I'm going to pick the smaller value, 5,855. This is your standard deduction. Exemption amount. If single, enter 0. So that's easy. So we don't have to worry about that. Add lines E and F. Enter the total here on line 5 on the front. So we look at lines E and line F, which ended up being a 0. We add those up and get our total. And this is the number that we're using on line 5 on the front. I'm not going to go through what could happen because we'll see it in the other scenarios. So line 5 on the front, this is the value that I ended up with. Line 6, subtract line 5 and 4. If line 5 is larger than 4, enter 0. So we're going to subtract line 5 from line 4. So we're saying $5,505 minus $5,855. If line 5 is larger than line 4, which it is. 5,855 is larger than 5,505. Then enter 0. So there's 0 there. This is your taxable income. So that's how much of Edgar's money, of his income, can be taxed based on standard deductions, based on him being a dependent. And we're going to talk. We'll get a little bit into the brackets in just a moment. So, line 7, federal income tax withheld from forms W-2 and 1099. So from the W-2, the federal income tax withheld is right here, $336. So we can go take a look down here, and $336 was withheld. Earned income credit, we're going to assume a 0. Non-taxable combat pay election, that's also 0. Add lines 7 and 8A. These are your total payments and credits. So 7 and 8A are the total payments and credits. This is what was paid from Edgar's paycheck. It was withheld from his paycheck and sent to the government. These would be credits that other incentives or different things that don't really apply here. This is the total then that is credited to Edgar, that he kind of put away to pay his taxes every paycheck. So the withholdings, the federal withholdings, is taken out of your paycheck and sent to the government, and they hang on to it for you to use to pay your taxes. Okay, so line 10, tax. Use the amount on line 6 above. So here's our amount, 0, to find your tax in the tax table instructions. Then enter the tax from the table on this line. So I'm going to go to this table, and this is what kind of the bracket looks like. Edgar, his taxable income is in the top tier here, which means any number between 0 and 9,325, we would take 10% of that, and that is what he would have to pay in taxes. In this case, because it's 0, 10% of 0 is just 0. As we look at other examples, it will you'll see how it can change things, or how things are affected by this. For anyone that makes above this amount, in between these two areas, they are taxed 15 it's $932.50, because that's 10% of this whole group. So it's 10% of that group plus 15% of the amount over that group. So quick tangent, and I'll talk about it probably again in future videos. When people talk about not wanting to move or make too much money because it will bump them into the next tax bracket and they will actually take home less money, that is not the case. This is called a progressive tax system. And what it means is that it progresses in how much tax is taken out, but only in the amount over each bracket. So if I'm making $37,950, then I am in this tax bracket, and I am paying 10% of this amount and 15% of this amount. I'm not paying 15% of the entire thing. I'm only paying 15% of this amount here, and I'm paying still 10% here. If I were to make $37,950 $37,951 and be bumped into this bracket, I would only pay 25% of the amount above this. I would only pay 25% in tax of the $1 that's over into the next bracket. Everything from the lower bracket is still taxed at 15%, which is where we're getting this number here. And it's factoring in the 10%. So the brackets, as you make money, as you make more money, anyone who makes within this amount is taxed the same. Anyone who makes within this amount is taxed the same for here and a different tax for here. Anyone who makes within this amount is taxed the same amount for here and here, and then anything above that is taxed 25%. So I don't know how clear that is, just kind of talking through and pointing at things with a laser pointer, but there are tiers to how the taxes work. So being bumped into a higher tax bracket shouldn't be too much of a concern. Okay, so let's wrap this up. Edgar ends up having 0 taxable income. 10% of that is still 0, so that's the amount he has to pay. Healthcare, individual responsibility, full year coverage, we're not going to worry about that. We're assuming it's 0. And we're going to add lines 10 and 11. This is your total tax. So 10 and 11 were 0 plus 0, so that gives us a total tax of 0. So now we're going to work out a refund. If line 9 is larger than line 12, so let's take a look. Line 9 is larger than line 12. 336 is larger than 0. Then we are going to subtract line 12 from 9. So subtract 12 from 9. So we have 336 minus 0. And this is our refund. So the $336 that Edgar sent to that was withheld for his taxes every paycheck, because he has 0 taxable income, he is getting this money refunded. The government is not paying him $336. The government is giving back to him the money that was withheld because he does not have any tax here. So does that make sense? So this 336 is not like the government paying him. This 336 is his own money, and he's just getting it back. And that's essentially what doing your taxes is. When you have tax withheld, you are sending your own money, almost like a weird savings account that you send out so that it's there for you to use on your taxes. Anything that's unused, you get back. And we'll see how that works out a little bit more in future videos with different scenarios. So in this case, there's a refund. He could fill in his bank account number, and a lot of this can be done online, and when you click the box, little pop-ups come up and they tell you what's going on. I'm just kind of filling out the paper version. So Edgar gets a refund. Here's a routing number. He can have it deposited to his bank. Amount you owe. So this was the case, line 13A. If that wasn't true, we would go down to line 14. If line 12 is larger than line 9, you subtract it. If the amount of tax that you owe is larger than the amount of tax that you had withheld, then you subtract that, and that tells you how much you owed. It means you saved up, you put away every paycheck, but you didn't put away enough. And then that's what you would owe. Third-party designee, we don't really have to worry about a lot of this stuff. You would sign this. And then if this was prepared by someone, maybe he went to H&R Block or he went to his parents' tax firm or something, they would fill this information out. Okay? So kind of a lot to talk through, But I'm going to do a couple more videos just looking through these scenarios. I don't know if we'll end up doing all four. But hopefully that gives you a good idea of what filling out a 1040 looks like, and we'll see it with a few more scenarios in the future.